BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions, and we are going to be defending and criticizing Kamen Rider Majade, the first female secondary writer who's been under scrutiny for almost a year and a half since her character and writer debut, with some thinking she's a terrible character, spreading false misinformation, bad rumors, and just spreading disingenuous criticism mixed in with some actually valid points, and trying to undervalue her role as a secondary writer due to a misguided belief Spanner, aka Valvarad, was meant to be the secondary. Yeah, some of this is from trolls, but genuine people in the fandom believe some of these takes. So we're going to go down these points and express what worked about her character, debunking claims, and actually providing some valid criticism meant in good faith from someone who actually paid attention. So there's this belief that Gotchard's crew wanted Renee not to be the secondary writer because she's a girl that the community spread. So here's what the actual producer of the show said. My request was to draw a female writer as the coolest hero possible. Because we had the ambition to somehow make Majade the secondary writer, we had her appear early on as a surprise in the winter movie, but since we couldn't have her on TV while the movie was in theaters, we delayed her TV appearance, citing a lack of energy as a justification. He even added, there was a time where I was scrambling for ways to make a woman secondary writer. For example, we could have given the antagonist a belt that could be used to transform into a monster and have it be used by a handsome male character so it can be sold to the public. Then the heroine would have either inherited or stolen it to become the secondary writer. And can we blame him? 3 seasons ago, the head writer for Revice wanted to make the main character a girl, and the Toei executives laughed in his face. So it was okay for us to call out Toei's higher-ups for blatant sexism, yet the same community tried to downplay the person who managed to push the envelope? Heck, Minato also had this to say. I think Renee was originally supposed to become Gotchard, going into detail about her being Fuga's daughter, her education, her alchemy not working, Hotaro being able to defeat it, and her drive to be the hero but needing to find her resolve to fight. That is typical of what some secondaries want, but the difference is that the show did the smart thing and used that resentment to actually connect them together to help each other out to understand one another. If you watch my Kamen Rider and Beyblade connection video, I said what separates secondary writers from tertiary writers is that the secondaries and the main writers are all on the same page regarding the same goal, but their different upbringings and methodologies make them clash until they're able to see eye to eye, and push each other to grow or become better friends, while tertiaries don't necessarily build that bond out of the gate. They have their own separate conflicts and hurdles and branch off from building that connection to the lead protagonist, despite the main character not having much of a personal reason to resent them. And look at all of Ray. Fuwa, Rintaro, Daiji, and Keiwa have either gone close to their primary writers or clashed with the ideologies, but also use those clashes to further their own growth or work with the primary to advance their stories, and that's what Renee did. She took the time to befriend Hotaro slowly over the first arc to the point where she came to him regarding her insecurities, leading to her becoming a secondary writer in the movie. In contrast, Spanner fit the mold of the tertiary. Yua, Kento, Sakura, and Neon all started out not opposing the main character, but slowly forged their own path with their own character arcs, only occasionally coming into conflict with the lead. Yua was being controlled when Aruto wanted her on his side. Kento was sealed for a while before keeping his distance to try and save Toma from the worst case scenario. Sakura helped Weekend, and Neon left the DGP until Ace tried helping out her family. Spanner didn't get along with Hotaro and only used Renee to find clues on Fuga. And for a season about growth and empathy and connections, naturally it would take him longer to become a writer compared to her. There's also the fact that some people just didn't pay attention to the show. I've heard YouTubers and some fans in the West argue that she was inconsistently written and poorly acted because she was stoic and reserved, combined with the fact that she was torn about loving her dad while being away from him, and her only knowledge at the time being that he betrayed the society she was raised in, only to break down upon hearing he's dead. You guys know you can be mad at someone who you care about and also not want to know that they died. Like, look at what she says in episode 4 when Hotaro's trying to cheer her up. I remember it now, how my father smiled. I love seeing him smile. And keep in mind, this was the episode where she and Hotaro were trapped by the Dark Sisters after she dismissed Spanner to take Hotaro's offer to come eat at his place, then proceeded to have a heart-to-heart with him about their dreams, leading her to say that after this, Hotaro compared working hard for his mom to make her smile, to make her remember that she wanted the same thing for her father, and helped her get over her resentments. And people just ignored her character arcs and argued she wasn't relevant when she played a part in every single arc. The introduction and Dread arc had Renee find her self-worth, passions like ghosts, bonding with her friends and allies she never once bothered to, and becoming a writer. The Guion arc had her breaking off her blind obedience to the organization and saving her teacher with the others. Then the new semester arc was her proving she grew up since the first arc, and the final arc had her finally getting through to Athropos. Like, people say she didn't have a conflict of her being obligated to her duty as an alchemist, when the point of the third arc revolved around the Academy selling them out and branding them as traitors similar to her father. Episode 19 culminated in her friends in the Kitchen Ichinose Alliance actively questioning if she could commit to the following to the alchemist COD. Hotaro reveals from his time travel that her father didn't betray the Union. Minato offers her to rejoin and threatens her at the end of the episode, though we all know he was proud of her in his own way. And her saving Athropos and breaking the code, resulting in her finding her own convictions. Even the beginning of the show, while she disagreed with Hotaro's methods, she still respected it and started to see chemis as less than creatures meant to be subjugated. And she defied the code, wanting to kill Sabimaru, and worked with the others to try to get UFOX to come down and offer a solution. So I don't understand how people miss that unless they blatantly chose not to pay attention. There's also the people who say Majade loses too many fights, and that's just not true. If you count every fight Renee has been involved with, pre and post becoming a writer, her win-loss record is about 20 wins to 10 losses. The only reason it doesn't feel that way for some people is that Gottschalk has a lot of team fights, especially after episode 19. Case in point, Episode 1 has her and Hotaro fight the Mantis Malgum. In Episode 2, she beat the Skateboard Malgum and almost knocked him out of his corruption. In Episode 4, she and Hotaro beat Lachesis. In Episode 10, she helped stop the Battery Malgum. She helped out in 15 with the whole group battle. She won her debut movie fight. She beat the Cerberus Malgum in 19. She forced the Angel Malgum to retreat in 21. She beat Clotho with Hotaro in 23. Then the Malgums in 25. And beat Type 2 Dread with Hotaro and Spanner in 27 before Type 3 came out. Owned by Guion, defeated the Mammoth and Kraken Malgum in episode 31, a Dark Malgum in 36, the Golem and Germain with the rest in 41, the Submarine Malgum with Hotaro in 44, saves the Bystanders with Hotaro in 46, defeats Godzilla in Twilight, and then beats Godzilla and Germain with win in the finale. She only loses to the Submarine Malgum in 3, knocked out by Boruto in 6, the Sisters in 12 with Dread's debut, kidnapped with the other students in 18, Gaiard and Dragonlost in 26, Grion with Spanner in 27, the Mammoth in 30, Glare in 33, Gigat's Fantastic Malgum in 38, Clotho Rebus in 39 until Lacus to save her, then the Dark Kings in 40. So anytime she's lost, it's either been alongside the other writers struggled with her, a major threat, or the main antagonist. And with 2 Malgums when she wasn't even a writer. I definitely think that there are more solo endeavors. People wouldn't make this claim. But at the same time, a show built on empathy, cooperation, and teamwork is naturally going to have more team effort into it. And we shouldn't dismiss her efforts just because in some fights she doesn't take the lead. Like, guys, 20 wins and 12 losses is not a bad record by any means. Oh, here's the fun one. Majade should have inherited Bahamut and Black Hole from her dad, or get Dragonless and Gaiard as a final form. I do not understand why people want Renee to mimic her father and take his same cards. Moon Cerberus came from a fight she won and a Malgum she helped Hotaro track down. She intentionally put herself in a nightmare to get the Alchemist Driver and save the city with Sun Unicorn and Twilight, was born from her ties to Athropos. So what connection does she have with Gaiard and Dragonlost besides, I watched my dad become gold and beat them up? Every form she owned, she already knew how to use or was something she learned or earned. Twilight was the bond she formed with Athropos from episode 8 to 48. But the show promised us Gaia Dragoon. That's a nice argument, Redditor. Why don't you back it up with a source? Now, let's talk about how she surpassed Fuga and how she defied fate with Godzilla. 2 criticisms against Renee's role in the story is that she's too tied to her father Fuga in the story, and he barely matters to her story, even though by the end she already surpassed him. Regarding Fuga, he's tied to almost everyone. He gave Hotaro the driver, the Dark King's maid and used Grion to try to get rid of him. The Dark Sisters and the Alchemist hunted him down for years, which caused Spanner and Kyoka to investigate Rinne, trying to reach him. Rinne already had conflicting feelings with his departure, feeling betrayed, but also the person who she loved the most, tying into her disillusionment with the Academy and life. There's also the majority of the Alchemist Society not trusting them, even though he took the chemis to keep them safe, since most of the higher-ups were mind-wiped by Gideon, and Athropos is modeled after Rinne, his own daughter. But to say Fuga barely matters in Rinne's story is also counterintuitive, since she already surpassed him. Fuga noticed Grion's depravity and him being the fellow Dark King's doll too late. The man managed to infiltrate Alchemist Society enough a fellow alchemist scientist fell for him, and Fuga's initial trust in him led to him using Rinne as an origin for Athropos. That resulted in him being only able to stop him after the attack on the alchemist school screwed over so many people. Minato's students and fellow peers, Spanner was orphaned, Kyoka was maimed, the higher-ups had their memories altered to blame everything on Fuga, Rinne's isolated and conflicted given her father raised her in the organization. Being able to defeat and weaken Grion for years temporarily didn't stop him from being hunted down for God knows how long by the Dark Sisters. His former allies believe he's a traitor, and he's got no one in his corner or to entrust but the chemis until he sends them free to avoid the Dark Agent's wrath. But despite all of that, Fuga believed in the next generation, entrusting Hotaro and Rinne with their respective drivers, which ties into Rinne's growth. Rinne started out in polar opposites to her dad. She had allies, but she wasn't particularly close with them until Hotaro helped her regain her confidence and passion for alchemy. She bonded with some of the chemis her father released out into the world and started finding hobbies and passions like haunted house and the paranormal. When Athropos started gaslighting her, it's because Hotaro encouraged her not to blame herself for what happened, and their promise to protect one another that gave her the chance to break Athropos' hold and cause Hotaro to shift the tide of battle against his sisters in episode 15. She became a Kamen Rider by taking a big risk the old her wouldn't have done to save her city from a tragedy similar to the one her father couldn't prevent. Unlike her father's attempts to get through Gion, Rinne was able to make Athropos see the light, and together they were able to defy the fate their fathers were forced into before. Godzilla made sense as the final boss for Rinne because her clairvoyance and manipulation of people's malice served as a test. She wanted Athropos and Rinne to fight each other to the death and could predict any action her target would make. But because Rinne worked through that the whole season to prove to Athropos she'd have her back compared to her father, she defied Godzilla and Gion's expectations when her words got through to her rival, finally making peace with each other. And this leads into why Twilight is the final form. This made Twilight worth the wait. Outside of hypocritical fans who complain final forms come way too early and get undermined, Twilight was born from Rinne and Athropos' bond, something that was built up since episode 8, and not just handed to her like people wanted Wind's forms to be. The fact that Godzilla's clairvoyance failed because they merged as one entity in their final form, as light and darkness symbolizes Godshart's themes. The heroes and villains have humanity, and by embracing and connecting with those who get that, they can overcome malice brought upon by people too afraid to make better change, like the Kings, and Rinne proved that she could defy fate, defeating a Dark King with just her efforts. Even when she fights alongside Wind, who couldn't even beat one before, now with her dad, she's able to beat two of them at once. So I actually like Rinne's character, but do I think she was perfectly well handled? Well, not quite. There's a few valid criticisms mixed in with the nonsensical ones, and I'll start with her relationship with the Alchemist Academy, Renge, and Sabimaru. So we all know that Rinne fell out of love with alchemy. I think showing a scene of her in the academy before she was in Minato's class, where she feels alienated by the other students who see her as a nepo baby or gifted, would make people sympathize with her more. And a brief scene of Renge and Sabimaru being the first people she can tolerate, but it keeps her distance and she doesn't feel like they could be friends. Since until Hotaro shows up and gets them all to go out together, Rinne never hung out with them. So I think a scene including that aspect would be interesting. As for the movie, I do enjoy Gotchard X Geet's movie, but it needs a bit of a rework. Rinne developed the passion to become a proper heroine, but the movie should have established from the jump in either a nightmare scenario that she wanted to fight alongside Hotaro but didn't have the means to. So she looks at her father's old notes, see that he was developing a driver, and before the Geets cast meets up, she accidentally bonds and captures Unicorn. Then she uses the sun. So when she puts herself in a nightmare dream and finds Fuga, it's because her nightmare is not being able to go back and fight, even though she made her own makeshift alchemist driver. But with her conviction and forgiveness, the real Fuga is able to use his research to perfect her attempt. It just adds more layers to her getting it. The other thing I'd add to the movie is near the end where Lick becomes another Geets, Renee plays a role in the final fight by having her use Unicorn's anti-magic skills and transfigure Hotaro's combination into Star Gotchard. So it still feels like she has some agency in her debut film, even if the boys have to take the screen light and focus. Another thing that would have benefited is her dad and having a heart-to-heart. Apparently, people don't understand the point of Fuga's character, despite him being the big good of the series who didn't have the support system from others Renee and Hotaro do. But one thing we needed in the final arc was her and Fuga having a heart-to-heart about everything she went through regarding her wavering faith in him, and him letting her know that he never stopped believing in her. Add the fact that his bond with the Chemis allowed him to find her in the dream world to get the driver and how he thought of her, and I think that would fix a slight issue with the final arc. As for Lachesis, with Lachesis joining the heroes, I think there could have been a little bit more there. I like her trying to help out with the comedy and Lachesis coming to save her against Clotho, but I needed a bit in between where Lachesis joins in episode 36, given Lachesis trapped her in Hotaro. I think that she could apologize to Renee and discuss whether or not she thinks Athropos can break free of Gleon's control, or have Renee hesitate about her joining, but after Lachesis saves her from 100, she lets that hesitation go and thanks her. Also could have benefited from one extra conversation with Spanner, because Renee and Spanner's relationship was complicated, but both see themselves as rational, but the other as someone they wish got to the same level as them. And post Valvarad Rider, I think Renee and Spanner should have talked once or twice about how their lifestyles made it hard to connect to others. It could be after the Gleon arc where Lachesis joins, and though she's not quite sure, she could reassure Valvarad that meeting Hotaro helped her shine, and having a partner by his side might help him do the same. I also think that Unicorn should have been out more casually like she was in episode 16 to represent Renee's original self, since Hopper 1 is much more outgoing and messy like Hotaro, and should talk to her more. Like how Hopper got upset with Nijigon for leaving, Unicorn could try to make peace between the two of them. It'd be cute if they made a mini model like they did for our lovable Grasshopper. Now, my problem with the Gaia Dragoon debate is what forms actually fit her? Now, I could point out that Kamen Rider fans are hypocrites because they complain certain characters have too many main forms and then say secondaries and tertiaries need more forms. I think Majade could have used between 1 and 3 more forms because only half of the forms she can use actually fit her well. People were upset because the secondary riders besides her barely use their forms. You know, because Vala and Baby barely used Amaru, Tycoon's forms come and go until Bujin. Live and Evil barely use their extra forms. Like, she used Moon Cerebus in 9 episodes, more than all of them. Heck, Holy Live, Lion Densenki, and Assault Wolf are the only secondary rider forms that were used more than once. So, what forms do I think fit her? I'd say Mercurine / Dawn Poseidon could work since it countered the Stalker who used the Submarine Malcolm when they returned as a revenge match. Giving Mars Phoenix during the 2-parter with Shakespeare, that was her first battle with Hotaro after the movie, but before Gudeon, and I think it fits because it focuses on their teamwork. Hell, the gauntlets fit with Jade's aversion to fists unless they're protected like Moon Cerebus. And it would be a super solid super mode, so people stop arguing Valvarad had more forms with her when Moon Cerebus is actually unique suit and not just reused assets. And it's just those two. For people insisting that her getting Gaia Dragoon says Gaia Dragon, you know how I'd actually write that in instead of just saying that she could have got it? During the Legend arc, have Kaguya give it the inspiration to use them as legends to use as a super form, like how his final forms are based off the legends who inspired him. And finally, let's talk about her number of actual fights with Athropos. I don't see people asking or recognizing that Renee and Athropos don't fight physically that much save for once, and it actually makes sense. Athropos was always trying to get Renee on her side, but Renee recognized that and tried to focus on saving her without fighting her. But I think having one fight where in place of the Sabimaru 2-parter, Athropos uses Dread Type 3, and Renee is barely able to beat her, but lets her go. So when Athropos saves Renee in episode 48, she actually has a time where Renee could have killed her, but didn't reflect upon that as well. It would also make it feel so that Renee just wasn't left out when Hotaro and Spanner went to go to Sabimaru's forest, since I know a lot of people didn't like the fact that she was frozen, even though you could also point out that Renge and Minato was too, though I wish she actually had something to do in those episodes. So yeah, I think that'd be fitting. So, to conclude, yeah, Renee's a great character, but there are some elements of her character that could have used a bit more work. It's disappointing that even months after her show ended and the fact that she's going to be the lead of her own special, people still undervalue just how much she did in her own season. I can understand wanting her to have a little bit more fights and a few more suits, but we had a character who broke the mold for secondaries in terms of not being defined by having pointless melodrama, but an introverted and aloof strickler, evolving past her insecurities into a warmer person who found her resolve, motivated by the support she reached out to in order to save both the people who mattered to her and a rival she refused to turn her back on. And now she's one of my favorite female Kamen Riders. But that's it for me. This script is going to take a long while for me to record, and I have no idea if I'm going to get this out on the last day of Women's History Month, considering I still have 4 other scripts that I still need to finish. But you'll get it when you'll get it, and I hope you all enjoy, regardless of if you agree or disagree with me. And if you do agree or disagree, please let me know. So, BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions, signing off.